This conference will now be recorded.
Right, let's start. Today I'll take only 45-minute session. Right. So where we are, so in this RFCs we have seen synchronous RFC, asynchronous RFC, and we have discussed exception handling and two-way communication by referring to the destination back. Okay. Now let us see the TRFC part, transactional RFC. So in case of synchronous and asynchronous RFC, okay, in case of synchronous and asynchronous RFC, the prerequisite is the remote server should be available at the time of communication. Okay, if the remote server is not available at the time of communication, it generates what? Runtime error. That is mandatory one. In case of TRFC, if the remote server is available, the request will be processed immediately. In case if the remote server is not available, it will be processed at later point of time. Okay, so let us understand this TRFC. And we cannot see this TRFC completely practically. Okay, we have to make some assumptions because we don't have any control on the RFC server. We cannot switch off that server. Okay, so we don't expect 100% for this TRFC, but we'll try to discuss to the maximum extent. So when do we go for TRFC? If the remote server need not be available at the time of communication. Okay, right. So and it is recommended to call only those function modules in TRFC mode which doesn't return any values. So earlier, if you take our synchronous and asynchronous RFC, so this we are assuming as RFC server, and this is the table we have seen. Z employee is the table, right? So in this table, we have some columns like employee number, employee name, designation, and this table has got some entries like 6 entries are there. So on top of this table, we have created what? One remote function model. So if I go to function builder, Z get underscore what? Employee data. Okay, this is the function model we have created. Z get underscore employee data. We register this as what? Remote function model. So if I go to attributes, this is a remote function model. What is the signature of this function model? It is taking employee number as input and returning the employee name and what? Employee designation. It is returning employee number and what? Employee name and what? Employee designation. 1 second, please. Right. So it is returning the employee name and employee designation. So these kind of function models, it is recommended not to call in a TRFC mode because this function model is having some written parameters. No? Exporting in nothing but what? Written parameters. So it is recommended to call only those function models which in TRFC mode, which doesn't return any values. Okay, so in this case it is returning. So I cannot call this in what? TRFC mode. So let us create another remote function model which doesn't return any value. Means the function model should not contain any export parameters. So let me create it. What is the function group we have considered for this? Yeah, Z remote F group. So within the same function group, I'll try to create one more remote function model which should not return any values. So what I'll do is I'll take the same table. So I'll create a remote function model which has to insert the data into this particular table. Okay, this table has got 3 records, 3 fields, and it has got around 6 records. So let us create a function model which should insert a record into this particular table. So I'll give in function builder, let us give the name of the function model as z insert underscore employee. Okay, this is the name of the function model. Create function group. Let us provide the existing function group z remote f group. Provide some description. Remote function model to insert employee data. Right, let us save it. As usual, we'll get a warning message. It is reserved for what? SAP. Right. So what is the job of this function model? It has to insert a record into the table. So how do we insert one record into the table? We can say insert database table from what? Work area. From work area. So what I'll do is, for this particular function model, I'll try to pass a work area, and the structure of this work area should match with the structure of the database table. If the database table is having 100 fields, okay, if the database table is having 100 fields, your work area also should contain what? 100 fields. Okay, the format of the source and target should be what? Same. The data type should be what? Compatible. Field names need not be same, but the data type should be compatible, and the number of fields also should be what? Same. Right. So keeping this syntax in mind, I'll try to pass one work area for this particular function model. So first let us mark it as remote. So I'll go to remote, I'll in the attributes tab, I'll mark it as remote function module. Done. And then in the import section, I'll pass one parameter. Let me give the parameter name as something ls underscore emp. Some parameter name ls underscore emp. Type. What is the name of the table? Z employee. So since I'm referring to a database structure, I can call this as a work area. Na? We are referring to the old structure. Okay, so yeah, reference parameters are not allowed with RFC. Let us make it as what? Pass by value. So this is the signature of my function model. It has got only one import parameter. Let us go to source code. I'm not taking any export parameter, changing parameter, and tables, because export is used for what? Returning the values. Changing will act as both import and what? Export. Tables also will act as both import and export. It deals with what? Internal tables. So I'm not taking any of these parameters. I have taken only import parameter in the source code. So based on this structure, based on this work area, I'll try to insert the data into the database table. So I'll go for insert statement. Insert, what is the database table? Z employee from work area. What is the work area? ls underscore emp. Okay, let me save it. Check for the syntax error. Activate. So we are done with creating the remote function model. Okay, so I created one remote function model which is having only one parameter referring to my database table. Since this parameter is referring to my old database table, I can call this parameter the work area structure we are passing, and we don't have any export, changing, and table. So based on this importing parameter, I'm inserting the data into the table. Done. So activate the function model. Right. Let us quickly test whether this function is working or not. So if you observe the table, my table has got how many records? It has got around 6 records. These are the available employees. So let me try to test it here only first directly. I'll execute this. Yeah. Okay. I need to prepare the work area. Na? So I'll just click on this. I'll give the employee number as something 200. I'll give it as 200. Employee name, let us give it as something. Employee designation. Done. So I gave what? Employee number, employee name, employee designation. I'll go back. Let me execute this. Okay, so when I execute, yeah, it might have inserted. So go and check the table. Earlier 6 records we had. When I refresh, yes, we have what? 7 records. So my function model is working fine. So let us call this particular function model from the another SAP system, which we are assuming as what? RFC client machine. From wherever we call it as RFC client machine. So there I need to call this particular function model. I want to call it in what? TRFC mode. Right. Right. So this is my RFC client machine. 1 second, please. 1 second. Right. So this is my RFC server machine. Let me go to other SAP system. So this is my other SAP system. Here I have to call the remote function model. So already we know the syntax for synchronous and asynchronous. So if I go to Abap editor, this is an RFC client machine, right? So in the RFC client machine, if I say Z call underscore SRFC, what is the syntax for synchronous mode? Call function, function name, destination followed by RFC destination. What is the RFC destination? Gensoft RDEST, and we have to pass the necessary parameters. Similarly, if you see the syntax for asynchronous RFC, call function, function name, destination, RFC destination, starting new task, performing subroutine on end of task, and we need to define the subroutine for receiving the results. Okay, this is the syntax for asynchronous RFC. Now, so as usual, before calling the function model, we require what? RFC destination. So I'll use the same RFC destination. What is the RFC destination? We have created Gensoft RDEST. If I go to SM59, right, under Abap connections, what is the existing RFC destination? Gensoft RDEST. This is the existing RFC destination which will be created by the basis consultant. Done. So it is available. Fine. Let us create the RFC client program. Let us create the RFC client program to call the remote function module. Am I clear? So here, yeah, before calling any function model, obviously we have to check the signature of the function model. So we have only one parameter. It is of type what? This table, and this table has got how many fields? If I double click, it has got three fields: EMP number, ename, and EMP desig. What are the data types here? Int, character of 25, character of 20. Okay, so before calling this particular function model, I need to prepare a work area which contains what? The three fields, which contains three fields. The field names need not be same, but make sure that the technical properties are same. The data types are what? Same. Right. So this is the function model which we need to call. Right. So in the RFC client program, in the RFC client system, I'll create the RFC client program. I'll give the name of the program as Z call underscore TRFC. Call remote function in what? TRFC mode. What is the type of the program? Executable program. I'll save it in the local object. So what is the signature of that remote function model? I need to prepare, right? I need to prepare a work area which has got how many fields? Some three fields. Okay, so let me prepare that work area. So in the RFC client machine, okay, let me try to read that values from the user parameters. I'll say something p underscore employee number type I. I'll take another parameter p underscore employee name something 25 type C. I'll take another parameter p underscore designation of 25 type C. So I'm reading all the three values from the user as an input. Then this based on these three values, I need to prepare a work area because I need to pass a work area which has got three fields. So let me create a local structure just for demonstration. I am creating a local structure, types begin of ty underscore emp, right? I'll take the field names. What are the field names in your target table? If you see the function model, the field names are what? If you see the fields in this structure, emp number, ename, and emp desig. So as I told you, the field names need not be same, but the technical properties should be what? Same. So what I'll do is wantedly, let me give it as something f1 type I. Wantedly, I'm giving a different names. F1 type I. Then I'll say something F2 of 25. Type what? C. I'll take another field F3 of something 20. Type C. So I'm trying to declare one type structure which has got what? Three fields. Ty underscore emp. 1 second, please. Okay. Okay. So I declare what? One type structure. Right. Now what I'll do is um, let me assign the let me declare a work area based on this data w underscore emp type what? Ty underscore emp. That's all the declarations are done. Now I'll prepare work area for holding what? Employee data. For holding the employee data. Clear w underscore emp. What are the fields in that? W underscore emp hyphen f1 equal to. I'll assign the data. What are the input we are reading from the user? I'll assign it to my work area fields. F2 equal to P underscore employee name. Then W underscore EMP hyphen F3 equal to P underscore designation. So work area is what? Prepared. Work area is prepared. Okay. Yeah. Now what I'll do somewhere here, just for understanding. Begin of RFC client program. And here I'll say end of RFC client program. Right. So once our work area is prepared, let us call that remote function. Call remote function in which mode? TRFC mode. In TRFC mode. So what is the syntax? Already we know the syntax for synchronous and what? Asynchronous. So I'll say call function. Call function. What is the name of the remote function model which we created here? Z insert underscore employee is the name of the function model. What is the importing parameter we have? ls underscore emp. So I'll try to call it call function Z insert underscore employee. We have to give the function model name in uppercase employee. Okay, Z insert underscore employee. Then I have to use addition called as in background task. This is a syntax for calling the remote function model in what? TRSC mode. In background task. As usual, we have to say what destination. What is the RSC destination which we have? Gensoft what? RDEST. Gensoft RDEST. And what is the signature of this particular function model? It has got one import parameter ls underscore emp, which is of type so and so. Okay, so what is the parameter name? ls underscore emp. So import becomes export. So I'll say exporting ls underscore emp equal to w underscore what? Emp. That's it. So what are the work area we're preparing? We are passing that work area as a parameter to that importing parameter. Done. Then somewhere here I'll say end of what? RFC client program. Yeah, already I wrote it. No? Done. That's it. Okay, let's see whether it works or not. Save it, check for the syntax, activate. So I repeat once again, those who are joined late. One second. Okay, right. So let us call this particular function model. Before I call, let me check the number of records in the server side. So this is my RFC server machine where the remote function is available. So in this, what is this function model is doing? It is inserting the data into the table. So let me explain. So what we have done here, we have created one table. We are assuming this table, which already we have, Z employee, which has got 3 fields. So we have created one remote function model, which has to insert the data into, yeah, okay, we have to create a function model which has to insert the record into this particular table. How many records are there in this table? 7 records. So keeping this table in mind, we created what? One remote function model. Okay, we are passing one work area referring to that particular structure. Okay, what is the structure? Table is nothing but what? A structure. Anything which is a collection of fields is what? Structure. So I prepared one import, but declared one import parameter. Based on this import parameter, we are trying to insert the data into the table. How do we insert one record into the table? Either by using insert statement or modify statement. Insert database table from work area. So this is my function model. Then in the RFC client machine, we ensured that we have the RFC destination Gensoft RDEST. It is already there. Now, since you have to pass a work area which should contain 3 fields, I am reading those 3 fields from the user. Then I prepared one local work area which has got 3 fields. What are the field names? F1, F2, F3, but the data types are same. Integer, character, character. In my RFC server also, all these 3 fields are what type? Integer, character, and what? Character. So we have to ensure that the field names are what? Same. These are what? Integer, character, and character. So keeping this in mind, I prepared a work area. We are assigning that input values to my work area fields. Then we are calling the function model. What is the syntax for TRFC mode? You have to use the addition what? In background task. Okay, so let's execute and check whether it will work or not. Yeah, before I execute, any questions so far? Okay, so let me execute now. How many records are there in the table in the target system, that is in the RFC server? We have 7 records, remember? Right, let me execute this program. I'll give the employee number as something 300. I'll give the employee name something Ramesh something. Designation I'll give something manager. So what is the employee number I'm trying to insert? 300. I believe this 300 employee number is not available in the table. So when I execute, okay, so I got the right statements, begin of RFC client program, end of RFC client program. Okay, so let's see whether this record is inserted into the table or not. When it will be inserted, if the remote function model is successfully executed, then it would have inserted the record into the table. So in my RFC server machine, earlier we had 7 entries. Now if I go to this, still we are having what? 7 entries. So what is the meaning? It is not inserted the record. Not inserted means it has not executed the remote function model. Am I clear? So this function model is receiving that work area. Based on that work area only we are inserting. So it is not doing that insertion. So let's understand what is the issue. What I'll do is I'll try to refer to the documentation of this particular TRFC mode. I want to understand what is the concept of this TRFC mode. So let us refer to the standard documentation. So I'll put the cursor on this in background task, put the cursor anywhere on this in background task and press what? F1. Okay, let me press F1. Right, you can see here, it is giving the documentation, standard documentation, call function in background task. There are other additions also, not required, leave it. Yeah, so what is the syntax here? See, what is the documentation here? Transactional call of a remote enabled module specified in function using the RFC interface. Done. Okay, yeah, you can see now. The transactional call registers the name of the called function together with the destination and the actual parameters passed in the parameter list for the current SAP logical unit of work in the database tables ARFCS state and ARFCS data of the current application server Abap under a unique transaction ID. Okay, done. After registration, the calling program is continued after the statement call function. When the commit work statement is executed, the function model registered for the current SAP LUW are started in the order in which they were registered. The statement rollback work deletes all the previous registrations of the current SUW. Okay, done. If the specified destination is not available when commit work is executed, an executable program called RSARFC is started in the background processing. By default, this tries to start the function model registered for SAP LUW in their destination every 15 minutes and up to 30 times. So what is the concept here is, one second. So we are trying to call the remote function module in what? TRFC mode. So what is the syntax I used here? Call function module name in background task. So what happens it seems is, see the execution process here. Yeah. Let me put it in diagrammatic format. So this you assume RFC server. Try to understand the concept. This is our RFC server where your remote function module is available. This is our RFC client. So in this RFC server machine, I created what? One remote function model. What is that? Z insert underscore what? Employee. Some business logic is there. I used some insert statement, whatever it is. We flagged it as what? Remote function model. That's why we are calling this as what? RFC server. Wherever the remote function model is available, we call it as what? RFC server. So this is your remote function model. Done. And this is your calling program, which we call it as what? RFC client. Right. So what is the syntax you are following? Call function. Before this, I gave some write statement. What is that write? Begin of what? RFC. What? Client program. I gave some write statement. Then we are calling the function model. Call function Z insert underscore employee. Okay. Then what is the addition we are using in background task? In background task, and obviously we have to specify what? RFC destination. What is the RFC destination? We have Gensoft RDEST. Okay, then we are passing what? Some parameters list. Okay, right. So in the earlier scenarios where we discuss a synchronous RFC or even asynchronous RFC, whenever we call the remote function model, what happens? The control jumps to what? The control jumps to RFC server for executing that particular remote function module. Am I clear? I repeat, in case of synchronous and asynchronous RFC, whenever we call the remote function model either in synchronous mode or in what? Asynchronous mode, the control will immediately jump to what? Remote function model for execution. Okay, but whereas in case of TRFC, what happens is the moment we use addition in background task, it is understood as what? TRFC mode. So what happens is in your calling system only, one second please, yeah, in your calling system only we have some database tables. Calling system is what here? RFC client. So in your calling system at the database level, let me put it like this, yeah, at the database level we have some database tables. One is ARFC S state, another is what? ARFC S data. So this is your database server, database of what? RFC what? Client. So what are the tables here? ARFC S state, ARFC S state, and what is the other one? ARFC S data. So what we understood from the documentation is, by reading the documentation, we understood that whenever we call the what function model by using the addition in background task, it seems that the request, this particular information will go and sit in this particular tables. Okay, what are the function model we are trying to call? What are the function model we are trying to call? The name of the function model, the name of the RFC destination, all this information will be stored in this particular table systems. The moment you say call function model name in background task, what happens? The information related to the remote function module and the destination, all these things will go and sit in this particular what? Table. So what I'll do is here I'll say, excuse me one second please. Yeah. So what happens here? The request is stored in this particular tables. A request stored. What is that request? Name of what? Name of remote function model. What else? Name of what? RFC destination. Okay, what else? Parameters of what? Parameters list of remote function model. All these details will go and sit in this particular table systems. I repeat, what is the documentation is saying is, you can see here, the transactional call registers the name of the called functions together with the destination and the actual parameters passed in the parameter list for the current SAP logical unit of work in the database tables ARFCS state and ARFCS data of the current application server Abap. So the information will go and sit in this particular table itself. Then what it is saying, after that, once the information is stored in the tables, if you further read the documentation, what is saying here, see, when the commit work statement is executed, okay, when the commit work statement is executed, the function module registered for the current LUW are started in the order in which they are registered. So it is saying that it will store the information here, and after that it seems that somewhere, if the commit work statement is executed, commit work statement, whenever the commit work statement is executed, then what happens? It will take the information from this particular tables commit work statement. What it will do? When you say call function, the information is stored in this particular table. Okay. What this commit work statement will do, it reads the data from this particular table. Understood? Commit work statement reads the data from this particular table, and based on that particular information, it will try to execute the what? Remote function model. So what has been reads the registered information, reads the registered info, and what? Tries to execute what? Remote function model. So it seems that when the remote function model will be executed only when the commit work statement is executed. But in our case, right, in our case, did we execute it? In our case, did we use any commit work statement? No, na. In the RFC client machine, we are just calling the function model. After that, we are using some write statement, but we are not using any commit work statement. In case if the commit work statement is executed, then only it will pick up the information from this particular table and it will try to execute the remote function model. Am I clear? It will try to execute the remote function model. Then this function model would have inserted the data into this particular table. But in this case, it is not inserted. Still the same 7 records are there. I don't have any employee number 300 here. So what is the meaning? The remote function model is not executed. So in order to execute, what I have to do? Somewhere here, I will use a statement called as what? Commit work. Am I clear? I'll use a statement commit work so that whenever the commit work statement is executed, it will pick up the information from this particular tables and tries to execute the remote function. If the remote server is available, it will process your request. Suppose if the remote function is not available, sorry, if the remote server, not function, if the remote server is not available to receive your request and process your request, what happens in case of synchronous and asynchronous? It leads to error. It leads to runtime error. So it is mandatory there. The remote service should be available. But whereas here, in case of this TRFC, if the remote server is not available at the time of communication, it seems that it will schedule a program in the background. What SAP will do? SAP will schedule a program in the background. What is that program name? There is a standard program given by SAP called as RS ARFC. Okay, so let me put it like this. RS ARFC SE. This is the name of the, it's a standard report which will be scheduled by SAP in the back. One second. Some key is getting pressed. One second. Yeah, what is that? RS ARFC. RS ARFC SC. Okay, what is this RS ARFC SC? This is the standard report program. Yeah, this is the what? Standard report program which is going to be scheduled by SAP in the background. Okay, so when it will schedule this in the background, in case when the commit work statement is executed, it will pick up the information from these tables. It will try to execute the remote function. If the server is available, your request will be executed. In case if the remote server is not available, it seems that SAP will schedule this program in the background. What this program will do, for every 15 minutes, this program gets executed. For every 15 minutes, it will check whether the remote server is available to take your request and process your request. Understood? How many times it will check? It will check for some 30 attempts, it seems. So if you see the documentation, what is saying at C, try to understand the documentation. Yeah, if the specified destination is not available when commit work is executed, an executable program called as RSARFCSC is started in what? Background processing. By default, this will try to start the function model registered in their destination every 15 minutes and up to what? 30 times. Understood? So it will try for how many times? 30 times it seems. For every 15 we will try to check whether remote service is available to process a request or not. Understood? Within the 30 attempts, if the remote server is not available, what happens? This program will get what? Expire. Again, we have to send a fresh request. Am I clear? So this is the concept of what? TRF. So in this case, why it is not inserted earlier? Because I have not used what? Commit work statement. Now what is the change I have done? I am trying to use what? Commit work statement. But again, as I told you, we cannot see it practically. As of now, how many records are there? 7 records. Any of my remote service is available. So let me try to execute. Earlier it was not inserted because we didn't add the commit work statement. Now when I execute, yeah, I'll give some employee number like 400. I'll give employee name like Raj 400. I'll give the designation as something manager. Okay, so what is the primary key field here? Employee number. I'm giving 400. Execute. I got the right statement, begin of RFC client and end of RFC client program. Done. Let me go and check the RFC server. Yeah, this earlier 7 entries we had. Now we have what? Good. 8 entries. We have what? 8 entries. What is this? 400, Raj 400 and what? Manager. So what is happening here? The moment commit work statement is executed, it will take the information from these particular tables and will try to execute that particular remote function. In our case, the server is available to process a request. No? That's why it got executed. In case if the server is shut down, if the server is not available at the time of communication, what happens internally? It will schedule this program for how many? It will schedule this program in the background. What is the job of this program? It should be executed automatically every 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes to check whether remote server is available to process a request. Like that, you'll try for how many attempts it is? 30 attempts. So this is the concept of what? TRFC. So when do we go for TRFC means if you are not sure whether the remote server is not available at the time of communication or not, in that cases, it is recommended to go for what? TRFC. Even if the server is not available, it will be processed at later point of time. So this is the concept behind TRFC. Hope this is clear to everyone. Any questions, please ask. So in this case, I cannot switch off my RFC server because I don't have the control. Okay, if you have the control with your hand, in your hand, you try to shut down this remote server. Shutdown means not to log off from the client. The server itself should be shut down. All the services of the application server should be shut down. So that what happens when the request is sent, okay, the request will go and sit in that particular table. So when the commit work statement is executed, it will try to send the request to the server. Since it is not available, what happens? It will schedule this program in what? Background. So what you do is after that you switch on the server, then you check it after 30 minutes or so, your request will be processed. But here I cannot show it completely practically because I don't have the control on the RFC server. That's it. And how do you check the status of the TRFC events? Again, this also we cannot see it practically. We have the T code called as SM58. Okay, in this case, since my remote server is available, it has processed the request. The moment commit work statement is executed, okay, it has immediately processed the request, but I will not get any status here. In case if the server is not available, and if the server is not available, what happens? Some log will be generated saying that the server is not available. So how do you check the status? We have a T code called as SM58. SM58 is the transaction code for checking the status of what? TRFC calls. So if you go to SM58, yeah, you can see here username function. To which function we have sent the request? Z insert underscore employee, Z insert underscore employee, right? And it is asking the destination. What is our destination? Gensoft rdest, Gensoft rdest, right? When I execute, I will not get, I'm sure I'll not get, because the server is available, it has processed a request. In case if the server is not available, when the commit work statement got executed, it will generate the log as the destination not available. I've seen it practically long back when I'm having the control in of the other server also. So if you shut down that server, you'll get that log. What is the log you will get? Destination not available. But here I may not get the log because it has processed the request. But still, let me try. I'll give the data 17 for wantedly. Execute. Yeah, I'm not getting anything because there is no log generated. Since the server is available, it has processed that request immediately. If it is not available, then it would have generated a log saying that destination not available, and it would schedule that program in the background. Yeah, any questions related to TRFC, please ask. So compulsory, whenever we call the remote function model in TRFC mode, it is mandatory we have to use commit work. If I don't use commit work, the function model will never be executed. Yes, Giri, what is the question?
Sridhar, while creating the function module, we don't use any exporting parameters in the
Even
like
if you
remote
use,
server.
even if you use, even if you try to call that particular function models in TRFC mode, it is of no use because it is not capable of receiving the results. That is what SAP is saying is, you call only those function models which it doesn't return any values.
Yeah, that is
Understood?
fine. But while designing the function module, we will not create any exporting parameters in the server.
Obvious.
But while calling here, I mean to say their import parameters here exporting parameter, no? So that time how it will manage the syntax actually?
No, what is there in that? Obviously, whenever we call the at the function
They're
module
exporting
level,
here importing, right?
no, no. At the function module level, we should not have the export parameters. We should not have the changing parameter. We should not have the tables parameter at the function module level. Okay, so
Okay.
obviously while calling, import becomes what? Export. So what is there here? We are just calling that particular, where is that? Yeah, I think I've closed it. So if you open that program, obviously while calling, import becomes what? Export. So how it will interpret? We are calling the function model by exporting this particular data w underscore emp, which gets imported in the parameter what? ls underscore emp. Based on that imported value, the source code gets executed. Yeah, Giri, is it clear?
Yeah.
At the function model level I'm talking, not at the time of calling. At the function model level,
Okay.
ensure that you don't have this particular export parameters. Even if you have, no problem, it will not give any error, but I cannot receive the values. That is why SAP is recommending to call only those function model which doesn't return any values. It is a recommendation, not mandatory. Yeah. Is it clear to everyone? So points we have to remember related to TRFC is, in case of synchronous and asynchronous, in case of synchronous and asynchronous calls, the remote server should be available at the time of communication. If it is not available, it raises some runtime errors like system failure, communication failure kind of exceptions. Okay, that's why it is mandatory. In case of TRFC, the remote server need not be available at the time of communication. And whenever we call the remote function model in TRFC mode, it is mandatory to use what commit work statement, so that whenever the remote function module is called in TRFC mode, the information related to the function model, RFC destination, and the parameters list will be captured in the tables ARFC S state and ARFC S data of the calling system, that is RFC client system. And as part of that RFC client, wherever commit work statement is executed, commit work statement will pick the data from these tables. Based on that information, it tries to execute the remote function. If the remote service is available, it will process the request. In case if the remote service is not available at the time of executing the commit work statement, what happens? SAP will schedule the program RSARFCSC in the background, and this program will be executed automatically for every 15 minutes, and will execute for how many items? 30 items. Actually, in the old versions, I remember in 4.6, it will execute only 20 times. But here in the documentation, in the ECC version, it is showing it as 30 times. Okay, but in the old versions, 4.6C and 4.7, where I worked earlier, it will show it as what 20 items. If you see the documentation, here it is what 30 items. Like that, within that 30 items also, if the remote service is not available, your request will be expired. Again, we have to send the fresh request. That's all. This is a concept of TRFs. Yeah, any questions, please, others? And this TRFC is also called as QRFC. Okay, what is the meaning of this QRFC means? As I told you, the TRFC, if you are calling the remote function in TRFC mode, it will not be executed immediately. The request is stored in the tables. So what happens when the commit work statement is executed in this particular tables? There might be many requests stored now. There might be many requests to different function models. So they are processed in the same order in which they are stored. That's what the documentation is also saying. Okay, if you have observed the documentation, when I press F1 here, what they are saying is here. When the commit work statement is executed, the function models registered for the current logical unit of work are started in the order in which they are registered, in which first in, first out. That is the meaning of that. Okay, that's why it is called as what QRFC. The requests are processed in the form of queue. Right? Any other questions, please? So we are done with synchronous, asynchronous at TRFC. I'll stop for today. Tomorrow, what we'll do is, tomorrow will be the last session for this RFCs. We'll try to discuss this particular radio button. What is this? Update function models. We already know normal function model that we create in normal Abap. Remote, we understood. Once we create a function model as remote, I can call it in what? Three different ways: synchronous, asynchronous, and TRFC. There is something called as update module. So when do we go for update models? We'll understand this tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow is the last session for this RFC concept. We'll try to discuss these radio buttons again. We cannot see everything practically. It's a theoretical discussion. You'll have some part, but update model, yes, we'll see it practically. But these related to these radio buttons, these are called as priorities. Okay, so we'll try to discuss what is the difference between these radio buttons tomorrow. And once I complete the RFC part, we'll start with what? Most probably with what? BAP is. BAP is also an extension of what? RFC. Then, and yesterday, some of you sent the mail saying that recording is not playing. See, don't play the recording immediately. After I uploaded, sometimes it may take 2-3 hours for getting buffered. So if you try to play the video immediately, it may not play. Okay, so just wait for 2-3 hours sometimes, and then you can play that video. Okay. Yeah, any questions before I log off? chalo then. So thank you everyone. We'll meet tomorrow.